Naomi, you got everything working on your computer now?
Yes, I got it back. We took it away and I got it back.
You know what? My speaker isn't working, so hold on.
Okay.
Find out what's going on with mine. All right, there we go. Now I could hear you guys.
Okay.
So you're all set with yours now?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm good.
Cool.
I can see everyone except there's hey. Okay, there's some people that I know, Tosh and Christina. Yeah, I can see everybody. I'm good.
Good.
Yes.
By the way, the teacher too that you guys see, that is my my whiteboard that I have to use for what we're going to do today. So.
Oh, okay.
Because today's our math day.
I just got out of an algebra class. I don't want to do anymore, honestly.
Oh, this is easy for you then, Christina. I'll tell you what, since you've done the algebra class, I'll let you lead this one. I'll just take a break. I'll drink my coffee. You got it.
You said that.
I said I did good in algebra. I said I took one.
Okay.
What time is your class before this one, Christina?
It's 8 o'clock until 9, so I just got out.
So it's just one after the other. Are you taking that through Elk Grove, or are you taking that through the community college?
Through Elk Grove.
Okay. Right, we've got 4 people waiting on. All right, I need a volunteer for a minute. Who will help me with, we're going to test something out and see if the ability to raise your hand works. So I need somebody to go into the bottom of their screen and click on participants. You should see the list of all the participants. And see if you have the ability to click on raise your hand. That function is there. Tyler, you got it. Awesome. Alex has got it.
I'm not touching anything. I don't see the word participant at the end of my screen. I see everybody. I can hear you.
Well,
hey.
For me, it's under the button reactions.
Okay, it's under reactions. Okay.
I don't see it.
We're going to try and use that today if we can. Ken, thank you. See yours. Robert's got it. Tony's got it. Mark's got it. Okay. Marquina is here.
Oh, I see. Oh, I do see that. Okay, I see. Let me see. Participant.
Yeah, it may be under reactions.
Yeah, okay. I just clicked on it. I had to wave my little the mouse here, okay? And so now it came up. Yes, okay. So please, you guys, excuse me. Hey.
You're doing great.
Okay,
no
so
we'll be
okay. All right. I don't feel shame. I'm just letting you know it takes me a while here. I'll get it.
Don't feel ashamed. I'm taking an algebra class and a computer class, and I'm just so out of my realm. And I'm learning stuff too.
I'm signing up for a computer class next. This is ridiculous.
Technology is moving fast for us. That is for sure.
Oh, man.
Okay. Yep. All right. The reason I asked you guys to find the raise your hand function is today when we do the review portion, which we're going to do in just a minute, I'm going to ask you guys, instead of just blurting out the answer, to raise your hands. That will allow me as a teacher to be able to call on you. When I call on you, you'll want to unmute yourself. So that's also in the lower corner. Some of you are already unmuted, so you're fine. We've had no issues with sound, so I'm fine with where we're at and stuff. So, okay. So today's class, as I mentioned, a lot of different math. We're going to be talking about pH, which is really a scale that we're going to use to determine really if a product or solution is acid or alkaline in nature. But before we do that, as I mentioned on last Friday's class, I asked you guys to go over the review questions that I posted in the classroom, in the Google Classroom. And there was 10 questions that I'd like for us to review as a class, because some of these will relate to things that will be on your test. And just as let you know, we now have received most of your signups for testing. So I should be able to, on Friday, assign testing for you guys. And if that works out, then I'll be able to go through that with you guys. So, okay. That being said, let's jump into today's class and get started with that review questions. And if you guys have your notes from whatever you took or wrote it out on, what we're looking for is reviewing just the first portion of this class that we've covered on chemicals. So we talked about the different types of cleaning chemicals. Who can give me some examples of the different types of cleaning chemicals that we've covered so far? All right, I'm going to start with Christina, since your hand's still up. Are you offering to answer that one?
Different type of chemicals. General purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What else?
Maybe like a sanitizer.
Okay. Alex, you want to help her out?
Yes, it was what type of cleaners, right?
Yep.
Okay, so natural soaps, acidic cleaners, solvent cleaners, synthetic detergents, abrasive cleaners, and water.
Yep, those are all different ones. So we talked about 7 different cleaning agents or different types of chemicals that we would use in the cleaning business. And so those were listed. So, all right, Tasha's just joining us. Okay, now in our lesson, it referred to green cleaning organizations. How is it that they try to minimize the number of different products they use? What do they do to do that? Tony?
Moving more towards, like, I guess, green techniques, maybe using things that are more natural, vinegar, lemon, baking soda, hot water, steam, things that are less harmful to breathe in to you and harm the environment.
Right, that's very accurate. In the box on page 11, the blue box, it helped us to understand that. And it, part of what Tony said is covered in there, using safer chemicals, more environmentally friendly. But it also talks about the idea of minimizing. And one of the things it's mentioned is it's best to standardize cleaning products by color, number, and type for ease of training and safety. As well, using neutral cleaners, okay, that are safer. And as we talk more about these chemicals today, we'll understand what a neutral cleaner is. But it's interesting to note when you're trying to simplify things and you start to color code and number code things, you realize I want to have the least amount of products possible. And that use of number coding and color coding really helps to start to look at how many products you have. And then you realize, wow, do I really need this much? And it allows you to minimize. So who can help us with what PPE is? What does that stand for? And what are some different types of PPE?
It's a personal protection equipment.
Okay. And what's an example of that?
Like a gloves, goggles, apron, and in English, face shield, and respirators.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Now, the basic rule of mixing chemicals, what is that basic rule that we use when it comes to cleaning or mixing of chemicals?
You want to
go ahead, Nelson.
You want to read the direction and make sure you have the right amount of measurement, and you don't want to add other solution, but you want to add water.
Correct. Very good. So we never want to mix two different products with each other, but if we're adding water, that's exactly it. And I think you hit on that. The first thing you said, read the directions. So those are some of the basic rules when it comes to mixing chemicals. Our book talks about two different types of soil. Who can help me with what those two different types are? Again, try and use the raise your hand function if you can. Ken, you want to help me with that one?
Oily or dry.
Okay. So today, when we talk about pH, we want to look for what the pH is of oily, sticky soils. So we'll discuss that. And those are the two different types, oily, sticky, or dry soils. Our book outlines, and this is going to be a terms that we have to use throughout the rest of this book of this class. What is equipment? How do we understand equipment? What does that refer to?
Is that like the day-to-day use, like vacuum cleaner, dustpan, laundry pan, garbage bags, supplies to stock the bathroom, and supplies to maintain your area?
So yes and no. And I'm going to ask Mark to help me with this, okay? Because you started out right, Christina, and then you kind of added to it. Mark, what was your answer?
Anything that's used over and over again.
Yes.
Vacuum cleaners, things of that nature, floor scrubbers and whatnot.
Those would be the equipment. Now, you added something to it, Christina. You talked about the supplies, the garbage can liners. So what are supplies besides just garbage can liners? How do we understand supplies?
Things you use for the job.
So supplies, anybody else before I answer it for you?
Items that are replaced.
Yep. Nelson, go ahead. You too.
Supplies could be what you need to use, like your mop, your broom.
So those are actually materials.
Those materials, that's right.
Yep. And Mark was hitting on it. The supplies would be things like the soap and those things. So here's the way we understand it. And to kind of clarify this, if you guys look at the top of page 10, it defines it. And it's important to define this. Materials are items that are not tools or equipment. They can last many uses. So like a mop, that would be a material. A broom might be a little bit more of a tool, okay? But things that we use several times, but eventually we have to get rid of, like mop heads, okay? A material might be something like that. Or a material could also refer to a rag, for instance. Okay, rags we use over and over again, but eventually rags get thrown away. They're not quite equipment where they last for years and years. Okay, whereas supplies are things that we go through all the time. The chemicals, once you use it, it's gone, right? So we're focusing in this lesson on the supply portion, the chemicals, but that would also include things like paper towels, toilet paper. Supplies are things that have a one-time use. We use it and it's gone. Whereas materials, multiple uses, eventually replaced. Equipment and tools are things that we keep for long term. Okay. In every lesson, every type of surface that we're going to clean, we will identify the equipment and tools we use, the materials, and the supplies. And it's going to be something that it's critical that you guys are able to identify those in each of the different types of cleaning. Because as you move into the advanced course, if you can't identify those equipment, materials, and supplies, when as an instructor, I were to say, hey, I need you to gather the equipment needed, that means I want to make sure you have the equipment, the tools, the buffers, or whatever we need for that particular project. Okay, so very critical that we understand those differences. And again, those questions may come up in your testing. It may identify, what are the equipment we need for this particular job. All right. We answered about the 7 different types of cleaning agents. Chemicals that remove hard water or salts from water. Now, I didn't cover this too much in class, but it's in your book in part of your reading assignment. What is it that is something that removes that? Mark?
That was a little tricky, but water softeners?
Water softeners. Again, it's not something we covered in the class, but remember, there are 2 minerals that are contained in most water. Remember what those were?
Calcium.
Yep, go ahead, Nelson.
Magnesium.
Calcium and magnesium, exactly. So when we use a water softener, okay, it's a type of salt solution that actually, or it's a compound that removes the salts from the water and makes it a little softer. So you might find that in a pool situation, but a lot of people have installed water softeners in their homes because they're tired of the hard water buildup on the shower doors and in their bathrooms. Okay, so it's a really nice feature to use. And there are even machines that do that. For instance, when we clean windows, they use a filter that removes those minerals. So, and we'll talk about that towards the end of this class when we talk about window cleaning. What kinds of soils can be removed using an acid cleaner? Again, this was in your reading assignment. We haven't really gotten into it in the class yet. Tony.
With acid, take a stab at it, inorganic soils like, I don't know, citric acid, phosphate. Okay. So what kind of soils will we remove with those kind of acids? Well, I know with solvents, I just have this in my notes, with solvents and alkali cleaners, it's more petroleum-based soils. Okay. So with acids, it's typically minerals. Minerals, okay. Yep, that we'll remove because minerals are alkaline in nature. So we'll cover that more. And this is the long one. So I'm going to break this apart into 4 sections. And because we're going to come back to these issues about the alkaline and acid as we cover that. This next one, in working with detergents, what are 4 different chemical actions? I'll start with Alex. Did you have your hand up, or was that for the last question?
It was just a question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I'm looking for the book and the notes that you posted on the Google Classroom. As soil. So do we refer to every mess as a soil?
Say that again. Do we refer to what?
Do we refer to every mess as a soil?
When we're cleaning, we definitely refer to the stuff that we're cleaning off as soils. Okay, because remember, there's two different types. There's dirt, the dry soil, or those wet, oily, sticky. Those will be soils. So cleaning is going to remove soils, and that's what our process of cleaning is. We're not going to refer to it as messes or anything. It would be as soils.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yes.
All right. So, Robert, you want to help me with the different chemical actions?
The wetting action.
Wetting action. What does wetting action do?
Oh, good.
Gets under the dirt.
Okay. Remember, it penetrates, right? Because water, what does it want to do? It wants to hold together, ball up, right? So wetting action is a wetting agent that allows the water to break apart and allows it to penetrate. All right. So what was the second chemical action in cleaning chemicals?
Emulsification.
Emulsification. What does emulsification do?
Enables water to break oil into small particles.
Yep. Remember what we talked about, how oil and water don't want to mix, but when they are, you got to break them apart again. So that's what emulsification does. It separates it out. What is the third action? Anybody want to help Robert out on this one?
Dispersion action?
Dispersion, yep. So dispersion is what? What does that do, Nelson?
Dirt is broke up into smaller particles and spread apart.
Yep. So we broke apart the oil and water through emulsification. Now we're breaking the dirt particles up into smaller portions. That's what dispersion does. And the last action that we use, what was that?
Adsorption.
Yep. And Robert, that actually occurs, it's similar to what you said. It's what lifts it, right? So adsorption, not absorption. Absorption is when it's pulled in. Adsorption is when it's lifted. Okay. Now it's able to be rinsed freely. So we break it all apart and into its smaller particles so it's easily to get rid of, but then we need that adsorption to help us to rinse it away. So those are the 4 different actions. So that segues into what we covered today, because that's how chemicals work. That's part of the thing. Now, most of what you deal with, you don't have to worry about whether or not that chemical will do that. We don't have to worry, does it have wetting action? You simply need to know that it's got a detergent, and that's what a detergent does. But the second portion of how chemicals work relates to pH. And that's what we're going to focus on for the next about 30, 40 minutes here, is understanding pH. And to understand pH, if you guys will look, we're going to reference your book on page number 16. You will see the pH scale. Now, pH, and I'm going to share my whiteboard from my other screen here. So let's see if I can do this right. All right. Yep, that looks good. So let's first understand what pH is. And bear with me. pH, when you see it written, is going to look like that. P, a lowercase p, capital H. That stands for the power of hydrogen. Now, to be honest with you, don't worry about anything more than just knowing what that means. Because frankly, when you get involved with the chemistry of understanding how hydrogen works within chemicals, there's a lot of chemistry involved here. a lot of how hydrophores work and so forth, and it's how the oxygen molecule breaks apart from the hydrogen. So we don't want to get too in depth with that. But what we need to understand is that pH really is just a unit of measure to determine for aqueous solutions, okay, aqueous meaning water-based solutions, whether they are acidic or alkaline. So what we use is this scale, and that scale has measurements. Okay, those measurements range from 0 to 14, and forgive my unstraight lines, but you know, we're working with a whiteboard here, right? On the low end of the pH scale are acids, okay? On the high end is what we refer to as base or alkaline, okay? In our world, we refer to them as alkalines, but a lot of chemists will refer to that as a base. Same thing, they mean exactly the same. In the middle of the scale is pH 7 or neutral. Now, to understand this, what chemists have done is they've said, okay, a 7 pH, a truly neutral product, is distilled water. It has no minerals in it. Distilled water has a pH of 7. It is right in the middle. It is not acid, it's not alkaline, but as that chemical goes down in pH, okay, it becomes what?
Acid.
Acid, that's right. I heard a little one say that. That's awesome.
Oh, no, that's me. I've got, I've got 3 things going on here, but I know that's acid, okay?
That's
and you hear
acid.
the dog bark and he got off his leash, okay? So anyway.
No worries.
Okay.
Yep. All right. On the other side, when we go up in pH,
customer service people specialist.
that is what?
Base.
Base or alkaline, right?
Or alkaline, yeah.
Yep. And we're going to typically, I'm going to erase the word base because most of the time in our discussion, in our industry, we're going to refer to alkalines.
It's internal, so it's in our. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, we have alkalines, we have acids. Let's understand what's
the website, right? It's not
different surfaces. You got somebody talking in the background there. So if you're not talking, you go ahead and mute yourself. That way we kind of keep the background noise. So to understand this, first we want to look at the fact that most soil, okay, that we talk about, the oily, sticky substances, are typically on the acidic side of the scale. They're going to be on this side. On the other side is minerals. So things like calcium and magnesium are typically more alkaline in nature. Why does that matter? Well, let me explain it this way. If we are trying to clean a soil, and you guys may have heard the term pH balanced, if we have something that has a pH of a 9, what we want to do is to balance the scale. We want to go the other side of neutral to get the scale balanced. Because if we think about like a teeter-totter, we're going to have to get right equal to it. So we would use something that has a pH of a 5. Does that make sense? We're balancing the scale. Now, in balancing the scale, the stronger something becomes, okay, the more alkaline it is, the more acidic we need to go, and vice versa. Now, as I mentioned, most soil is acidic by nature, but the reality is it's not extremely acidic. In fact, here's some examples of some acids. If you guys will look on page 16 of your book, these are some of the different soils. And I think if we think about our home, we think about spilled milk. Okay, that might be something that would be spilled in the kitchen. And if we got milk spilled on something and we leave it sitting there, you know, it's going to attract dirt and soils, especially if we think about it on a carpet. Notice what the book refers to milk as its pH. It says it has a pH of 6.4. So that's going to be probably right about here. Okay, right towards the middle of close to neutral. So we don't have to go much more on the alkaline side to balance it, to remove that milk soil. But let's go a much more extreme, right? Let's talk about something like vinegar. Vinegar is very acidic. It has a pH of 2.4. So it's going to be way over here, right? Now, what is something that you guys enjoy eating that contains vinegar? Anybody want to help me with that one? You have to unmute yourself. Ken, go ahead.
You know, like salad dressings?
Bingo, salad dressing. You know, oil and vinegar makes salad dressing. You get the vinaigrette or something like that. So a lot of salad dressings have vinegar bases in them, or vinegar acids. So that being said, that's a food-based soil, right? Other food-based soils, so you'll notice lemon juice, right? We enjoy lemonade. We use lemon for a lot of different things. Tomato products. Tomato has a pH of about 4.5. So we start to realize that a lot of our food soils are acidic. So if we're dealing with food soils, and most soils in our home are what? They're food soils. Mm-hmm. So we need to use an alkaline to remove those. And then on the opposite side, it brought out the fact of eggs. Eggs are much more alkaline. They have a pH of 8.5. So we would use something a little bit more acidic on those. Now, we're not going to see too much egg spills or egg soils or things along those lines, but we mentioned that one of the things that is very alkaline is minerals. And so we use acids to remove them. In fact, when you look at your book, it mentions on page 16, right above the scale in the column on the right, it's under soils and pH, right above the picture. It says grease or oily soils are usually acidic and require an alkaline cleaner to remove them, whereas rust and mineral deposits are usually alkaline and require an acidic cleaner to remove them. So are we making sense that we want to understand what type of soil, so we're using the right kind of product? Mm-hmm. You guys understanding that?
Yes.
Okay. So now we're going to take this a step further, because now let's just talk about how that same scale right? We've got 7 in the middle. 5, 6, 8, 9, 10. This is what makes this really interesting, is how much stronger products are. Because the pH scale is, and this is a math term, it is logarithmic, okay? I think I'm spelling that right. What that means is each time I go up in the scale or down, this difference here between 7 and 8 pH is 10 times stronger. So, Christina, you were dealing with algebra today, right? And in algebra,
I didn't do good.
I understand. But in algebra, you talk about what we would refer to as exponents. And what we really want to look at, just real simple, is the fact that every time we go up in strength, it goes by a multiplier of 10. Okay? So here's an example. If I take a product that has a pH of 10, it is not just 3 times stronger, right? It's not just 7 to 10, 3 times stronger. It is how much? It's 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000 times stronger, right? So it becomes really important that we make sure that we're using the safest product possible. That has to do with green cleaning, right? Using safe chemicals. So if we're going to go to a product that has got a pH of a 10, we better make sure that we need it to be that strong, which means the only reason I want to go that much stronger is if I'm really removing something that is really acidic, that maybe has a pH of about a 4. Otherwise, I'm overkill. I don't need to go that much stronger. And going overkill in cleaning is not always a good thing because it can do a couple things. One, it can damage surfaces if we go too strong. An example is if you were to take an acidic cleaner that has a pH of 6 that's just slightly acidic, it probably won't cause a whole lot of damage to marble. But if I have a cleaner that has a pH of about a 2, I'm going to ruin the marble floor. It will destroy it. Okay? Know what you're working with. Opposite side, floor strippers, okay, have typically, they used to have a pH upwards of 12. Very, very strong chemicals. So remember what we said? It's 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, right? How much is that? Stronger than neutral. Who could help me with the math?
You said 10 times 10 times 10. That's 200 times.
Well, that means 2,000.
Yeah.
Nope.
10 times 10.
So let's use your calculators, okay? Use your phone calculators.
So you're
Go
doing
10 times 10.
10 to the product of 5, I guess. You're going 5
Yep.
over.
Yep. It is 100,000 times stronger than distilled water.
Wow.
Right? So here's what used to happen with floor strippers. When the chemical companies used to make a floor stripper that had a pH of 12, it was so strong that literally it was starting to affect people's shoes. It would eat the rubber on your tennis shoes. It was that strong. So we've learned how to make products safer. Now, most floor strippers have a pH of around between a 10 and 11. We don't like to make them stronger than a 12. That's just the strongest you'll see a floor stripper anymore. But usually they're going to be in that range of between 10 and 12. So much safer to work with. So our point is we want to understand what we're working with. If we don't need to go that strong, don't. And later in this lesson, on Friday's lesson, we're going to talk about the safety data sheets. Every chemical that we work with in the chemical cleaning industry, that's a commercial cleaning product, has a safety data sheet. Part of the requirements on a safety data sheet is to state the pH of the product. So it's easy to find out what is the pH of the product I'm working with. So as a cleaning professional, you want to understand, am I working with an acid cleaner? Am I working with an alkaline cleaner? Or our most common is what we call neutral cleaners. Those products that are closer to 7 in pH. Okay. So
that's a question.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Their pH is not labeled on the bottles or the product.
Not necessarily always.
Well, that's just something he
In the
mentioned,
past,
so I don't know.
it was never required. I will double check about the new labeling requirement because I don't remember, and it's a good question, Robert. I don't remember if it is something that is on the new product labeling. So I will confirm that. Now, I worked for a chemical company that for 20 years, they always put the safety data sheet onto the bottle so people knew right up front what the pH was, because they felt like they wanted to make sure that the persons using it had as much information as possible. So they were really good about that on their boxes and on the bottles, having that information. I think Tony got bumped out. Let's let him back in there. Okay. So that being said, that is pH. The very simple thing we need to know is for common and easily identified soils, 2 very general guidelines are: 1, that greasy or oily soils are usually acidic and require an alkaline cleaner. And then on the opposite side, rust and mineral deposits are usually alkaline and require an acidic cleaner. So remember those 2 points. Those are critical for you to understand. And that point is made on page 16. So if you want to highlight it in your book, that's critical for you guys to understand that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Now, let's take it to the next step. Any questions about what we covered so far? Alex, let's start with you.
Yes. What is critical on page 16? Critical?
On page 16, right above the pH scale picture, you will see on the right-hand column where under the subheading soils and pH, that last little paragraph makes the comment: for common and easily identified soils, 2 very general guidelines apply, and it has number 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No. Who else had a question? Naomi.
I'm looking at the scale, and milk magnesia is really high alkaline fat on the pH balance. What about castor oil? Where would that hit? Because as a chemical, castor oil.
So I don't know, Naomi, but I'll tell you what. I give you the assignment. You can do some research and see if you can find it, and I will match you. I will also research it, and you and I answer that by Friday.
Oh, okay. And the only other thing is, like, if the kids or the dogs, okay, if they had a hair in their eye or something, or I needed to wash their eyes, I used milk. And I was just looking at, it's neutral, so that's the reason it doesn't burn or anything when you use it. Okay, I'm good, and thank you very much.
Yes. And you know what, Naomi, that's a fantastic comment, because it is closer to neutral. And so, water is always the best thing for it.
Yeah.
But milk has that, it's smoother and yeah. So not a bad idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about this part of the discussion?
No, so I just wanted to reiterate. So when you said that most food soils are acidic, that's why most chemical manufacturers are using something more on the alkaline side?
Bingo.
Okay.
That's exactly it. Do you have another question, Naomi?
No, I thought I lowered my hand.
You're
Okay,
fine.
no. Okay.
Okay. We are going to move on to the next portion of this. And that has to do with the idea of dealing with dilutions, how chemicals are diluted. Because here's the interesting thing. A chemical that has a pH maybe of an 8 or a 9, when we combine it with water, who has a pH of 7, you can imagine what happens. It lowers the pH level when we dilute it with water. And the more we dilute it with water, the more it raises that pH level. So when we deal with whether it's an acid or an alkaline, anytime we dilute it or add water to it, it raises or lowers the pH of that product. Now, to understand that, most of the times we're using chemicals. When we buy a chemical from the grocery store in a bottle, majority of times those are ready to use products. You go to Target or Walmart or Home Depot or Lowe's and you buy a cleaning product, those products are ready to go. But there are chemicals like degreasers and more commercial cleaning products. They're very heavily concentrated in the bottle. And part of the reason why that is the case is that chemical manufacturers, part of what happens when they are making a product, they have to ship it to a location to sell it. So maybe some of the biggest chemical manufacturers in the United States are manufacturing products in Ohio. To transport that product from Ohio to California or even further to Hawaii, if we make it where it's ready to use, we're transporting mainly water. And water is expensive to transport. So if we can make it more concentrated, when we ship that product, you can add water yourself. So they'll make a concentrate and then allow you to mix it with water yourself. And that's what happens with commercial cleaning products. We are typically mixing them themselves or ourselves. Now, a lot of companies have gone to using chemical mixing stations. Look at the picture on page 17 of your book. It's in the lower right-hand corner. You'll see a blue machine, and you'll notice the person with the glove is turning a dial. These are typical of what we call chemical mixing stations. You simply select the chemical you want, you press a button, and it'll fill the bottle for you, kind of like a Coke machine when you go to the fast food restaurant. Now, the value to that is somebody has already figured out all the dilutions and set it up for you. All you have to do is press a button and it pulls water, sucks the chemical up from the concentrate, and mixes it for you. The reality is, as convenient as that is, there's still a lot of products we have to learn how to mix ourselves. So we're going to start with understanding a few things. And let's start with the basic understanding of measurements, because in the cleaning world, we are dealing with volume. Okay. So our measurements of volume, that's what liquid measurements are, is volume. Okay. We use things like pints, quarts, and gallons. Who could tell me, and the basic measurement of all this is an ounce. Who could tell me how many ounces are in a gallon of water?
It says
Alex.
128. Oh.
Yep, go ahead. I heard that one person. 128?
128, yes, right there on the page. Yeah.
Okay. So Alex, can you tell me how much is in a quart?
Excuse me, quarts?
Yep.
I cannot answer that. I'm sorry.
No worries.
But I think it. No, I isn't.
Quart has thinking how many. Gosh.
I'm gonna cheat and help you guys. It's
Okay.
32.
32. Okay, that's how many
Yep.
ounces.
And a pint is 16 ounces. Now here's the good news. Reality, most of what we're going to work with is gallons. We need to know ounces and gallons. The ounce is a standard unit of measurement, but we will work with occasionally gallons as well. So you're going to see a term that is written like this. Bear with me, guys. There was a principal that was calling me. 2 ounces per gallon of water, right?
Mhm.
And that's a very common term that you would see in the cleaning world is how many ounces per gallon. So what we're doing, we're not talking about a ratio in this terminology. This is what we refer to as a dilution. How much is it diluted? It is 2 ounces of chemical per gallon of water.
You can play with your
right?
Play with your.
So what if somebody were to write it though more like this? This is what we refer to as a ratio of 1 to 64. Okay. Now, how do they understand that to be? Here's how they came up with that ratio to come up with that number. We said there was 2 ounces and there's 128 ounces in a gallon. So if we divide 2 into 128, it equals 64. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So why does that matter? Why do I need to know that? Well, first of all, if I'm mixing chemicals and I'm using a mop bucket, right? So bear with me, my mop bucket is going to look like this. It's going to have some wheels on it, right? It's going to have a ringer up here. Now, this mop bucket has a limited amount of capacity, of volume. Now, most of the time, that volume, we're never going to fill it all the way up. So if I poured water into my mop bucket and let's just say I filled it up to about 4 gallons of water, and I have a dilution rate of 2 ounces per gallon, how many ounces of chemical do I need to add to it?
Wow, 4 gallons. 128.
Let me make it simple. 2 ounces per gallon of water. Eduardo.
8
ounces, right? 2 ounces per gallon. So we would go 2 times 4 equals 8. Okay. I'll pour 8 ounces or a cup of water of chemical into that, and I would have my cleaning solution. Pretty simple, right? But as I mentioned, not all chemical companies are the same. Some will not give you the 2 ounces per gallon of water. They're simply going to tell you, mix it at a 1 to 64 dilution rate.
Oh my gosh.
Throws you all off. How do I know how much to use?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we want to do the math for this, the way we would figure it out is, first of all, we have 4 gallons, right? They are 128 ounces. And I know this is complicated, and this is why I said this math gets a little tricky. So 128 times 4 is what? You guys can use your phones for calculators if you want.
512.
512, exactly. Ken, do me a favor. Use your calculator again and divide that by 64.
Divided by
8.
It's a 1 to 64 dilution.
You said divide that by 8?
64.
Oh,
The
divided by
5
64. Okay.
Yep. Because remember, the chemical company just told you it's a 1 to 64.
Okay. Wow.
512 divided by 64 is what?
8.
Very good. So that math works out to be the same. So whether they say it in ounces per gallon or dilution ratio, we can still achieve the same answer. 8 ounces. That's why we need to know and understand these two dilution ratios. So I'm going to give you guys a few questions, and I want you guys to work them through with me. All right? We're going to start with some simple ones. And I don't want you to blurt them out. I want you guys to raise your hand. Okay? We have a chemical that is diluted at 8 ounces per gallon. We have 5 gallons of water. Who can tell me how much chemical I would add to that? To my 5 gallons. Hang on, Naomi.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
let Eduardo.
40 ounce.
40 ounces. Eduardo, how did you come up with that answer?
You multiply 5 times 8.
Yes, you do. And that gives you 40, right? All right, let's do another one. This time, I have something that dilutes out at, let's say, 32 ounces per gallon of water. And I have 10 gallons of water. How many ounces of chemical do I need to add?
That's 2.
Hmm. 320.
Arkina, what did you say?
I think 320.
320. Yep. 10 times 32. Now, just to kind of make this fun, how many gallons of chemical is that?
That's what I was
320 ounces, right?
Yeah. Oh, so you asked how many gallons that was?
Yep.
So I would divide that into 128. So 2.5.
You're exactly right.
Okay.
2.5 gallons. Are we all understanding that? Here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. If you understand it, I want you to give me a thumbs up.
I don't see the.
So in your reactions button, go to your reactions button and give me a thumbs up if you understand.
I don't see a reaction button. Okay.
Down by participants. So
Okay.
Ken's got a thumb up. Tyler's got a thumb up.
Reaction. Oh, I see it. Just a moment.
Okay.
There you
So
go.
let's do a few more because I want to make sure everybody's understanding this. Because right now, all we're dealing with is just understanding that. And I'm going to help you with this a little bit further. Let's understand that when we are working with ratios of any part, we're talking about parts. It doesn't tell you what the unit of measurement is. A ratio is simply one part to another part, right? For example, if I said I had one blue BB and 4 red BBs. How many BBs do I have? I have 5, right? But it's one of these to 4 of those. And if I told you I wanted you to mix these BBs together, and for every 4 BBs, I wanted you to add 1, that's a mixture of 1 to 4, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all we're talking about, is mixing something and how we mix these parts together to get one total mixed solution. So now that we go back to that, we start talking about 1 ounce per gallon. And if I said I had to make 2 gallons, or I have 2 gallons of water, how many ounces do I need to add? 2 ounces, right? 1
Yes.
times 2. 1 times 2 is 2. If this was 10 gallons, I would do the same thing. 1 times 10 is 10. Are we understanding this concept?
No, I didn't understand.
What we're saying, the simple way to do this math,
Mm-hmm.
all right, when we are given the amount of ounces per gallon of water, all we need to know is how many gallons of water we are mixing it with.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
For example, again, my ugly looking mop bucket. You guys don't get to criticize my drawing because I suck at drawing, but right, we have a nice little mop bucket here with a ringer. A mop bucket has an amount of chemical that you're going to put in, but you're going to add water to in the mop bucket, right? And on the side of the mop bucket, it has measurements. It'll have a 1, a 2, these measurements up the side. So if I add 2 gallons of water in here, right? I have 2 gallons of water, and the chemical company told me to mix this chemical, 1 ounce of chemical per gallon of water. What I'm doing is I'm simply saying, I know I have 2 gallons of water. They said 1 ounce per gallon.
Okay.
Then we could do
So
2.
2 ounces. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I got it.
Ken has a good helpful technique too, by the way, regarding muting yourselves. If you'll all do me a favor, because we're getting a lot of background feedback because of microphones and stuff. If everybody will mute their microphone, okay, and then when you need to speak, just hold down your space bar to be able to speak.
Okay.
All right. So if you'll all mute yourself. Okay, good. That helps a lot with the feedback. Somebody is not muted, so. Okay, I think we got everybody muted. Good. All right, thank you, Ken, for that reminder. That does help a lot with the feedback. And that's why I asked you guys, let's use the either raise your hand or the thumbs up. So again, with the thumbs up, are we understanding this concept of ounces per gallon of water? Everybody get that concept? And even show me in a thumbs up in your pictures. Ken's got it. Robert, you got it? Got it? Mark's got it. Okay. Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, I got it.
You got it. Nelson's got it. Okay. So I just want to make sure everybody has really got the concept of what we're talking about when we ask this question. All right. So that being said, we're going to move on a little bit. The next step in this process is the whole concept. We've cleared, or we've dealt with the concept of what we're going to call ounces per gallon, okay? This is them just giving you it this way. That's one of the standard ways. But the other way the industry may write it is in a term like this. And a simple way to convert this to the top portion is by doing this. We have to understand that the parts have to be equal, right? So how many ounces are in a gallon? 128. So to understand 1 to 64, I'm going to divide 64 into 128, and it's going to be 2. So 1 to 64 equals 2 ounces per gallon. So I'm going to end up giving you guys a homework assignment. And the cheating is it's in the book already. So let's use our book for a minute, and I'm going to help you guys with this because there's a little cheat sheet. Look on page 17 in the top right-hand corner. So you'll notice the ratios written there, and it shows you the ratio of 1 to 4. Okay. A 1 to 4 ratio is how many ounces? So use your hand to raise your hand. How many ounces per gallon of water is a 1 to 4 ratio? Nelson.
8.
Look at the box on page 17. You see it up in the top right-hand corner?
Yes, 32 ounces to 1 quart.
Yep. So ratio of 1 to 4 is 32 ounces per gallon of water. Okay. Let's take the next one. 1 to 8 is, what's the next one tell us?
16 ounces to 1 pint.
Yep. Yeah, forget about the 1 pint. That's just telling you what that unit of measure is.
All right.
16 ounces is a pint. So a 1 to 8 is 16 ounces per gallon of water. Again, if we want to do the math for it, and you're wanting to understand it, we would divide 8 into 128, and it goes 16 times. All right. So that's how you do the math, is you take the unit of measure, gallon, we take this number here, and we divide it into 128. Are you understanding that, Nelson? Okay. Good.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Mark. Do you have a comment, Mark?
There you go. You hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I asked this earlier in the week. Maybe you're going to cover it later. But in the literature that I've been reading, it says they add the two together, say like the 4 and the 1, 5 divided by 128.
So here's how that works. So that's the next step in this process.
Okay, then I don't want to jump ahead. But
no, but it's a good question. And keep your mic open, Mark, because we're going to kind of go back and forth in a discussion here for a minute. Okay. So look at how we're seeing this. This is really just understanding the ratio. 1 to 64 is how many ounces per gallon of water. That really doesn't limit us as to the container size. Now, here's where this becomes a problem. Let's use this same idea. We've been talking about a mop bucket. But what if we were dealing with a spray bottle, right? And it's got a little sprayer up here, and you're going to have to forgive me, guys. That's somewhat of a spray bottle, not the perfect. But a spray bottle has a very fixed amount of liquid that we can put in there, a volume. Usually it's anywhere from 24 to 32 ounces. So for the sake of our measuring, it's 32 ounces. Now, what if the dilution ratio we were using was a 1 to 32 dilution? Can we fit 1 ounce into this bottle if we fill it all the way up with water?
No.
Why not?
Because 32 ounces and you're adding more to it.
It overflows, right?
Right, right.
So the problem is our chemical has a dilution rate of 1 to 32. My bottle's filled with 32. So that means I have to reduce it. So therein lies the challenge of how to be able to figure that out. Now, let's use this same dilution rate, the 1 to 64, right? It's got 2 ounces per gallon of water. But I'm not mixing it with a gallon of water. I'm mixing it into a spray bottle. How do I figure that out? There's 2 ways I have to do this. First thing I need to do, because now it's a little bit different. Before, when I dealt with a mop bucket, and again, I'm going to draw a simple bucket. That bucket, I have all kinds of room in that mop bucket, right? As long as I don't fill it all the way to the brim, I have room to add the extra chemical. So I can forget about the fixed amount of volume. But in a spray bottle or in a pump sprayer, it becomes more important. Now I have to figure out using this ratio. Mark, that's where I'm now going to take and do exactly what you're talking about. First, we're going to use that 1 to 64. Because now I have to put it into a set volume, I need to make sure I have 1 part of this to 64 parts of that. So how many total parts do I have?
You got 65?
65 parts, right? 1 to 64. I'm going to have a total of 65 parts. So now the fun comes in. And guys, this is where you use your calculator. So this has 32 ounces in it, right? So I'm going to take 32 and divide it by 65, and it is going to come out to 0.4923, which basically, if we round up, is going to be 0.5. So I'm going to use 0.5 ounces of chemical, but I'm going to subtract it from that 32. So I'm going to have 31.5 ounces of water and a ½ ounce of chemical. So it fits in there. See how we did that?
Right.
Okay. That's why this becomes a little trickier. This math is a lot of guys in the industry are going to try and say, well, I'll put an ounce of chemical in there and then I'll add my 32 ounces of water. Or I'll just fill it up and I'll go 31 ounces. Now, let's be honest. Is it that critical? Maybe, maybe not. A lot of the chemical companies understand and they have a little room of variation in their dilution ratios. But to get optimal performance, we want to make sure it's mixed accordingly. And one of the areas this is most critical is disinfectants. Okay? Because disinfectants are super heavily concentrated. They usually have a dilution rate of something around 0.5 ounces per gallon. That's the low end, and the high end is 2 ounces. So if they tell you that, you want to make sure you're mixing it right. And you need to know, I'm not mixing a gallon of disinfectant. I'm mixing up a spray bottle. Nelson, you have a question? Unmute yourself, Nelson.
Yes. To go back to the 1.64 and parts, you add both parts together, would give you 65, and then you divide it by the ounce. the 32 ounce?
Yep. I'm going to divide 32 ounces by 65.
Thank you.
Yep. Good question.
Yeah, Dave, I don't think that that the book, unless I missed it, says you subtract that half ounce to the bottle. That's what kind of threw me off.
Yeah, it doesn't give you that last step.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So there is, I want to make sure because there's one particular one that comes up on the test and I want to address that. So if you guys give me a second here, I'm going to look for something because there's a specific question where this is asked on a test and I want to address that just so that we make sure we understand it because it's one that will trip everybody up. All right, so I'm going to go through the few review ones that would be asked on the test, and then I'll see if you guys can help me. So you guys are going to answer the question, and again, by raising your hand. The question on our test will be, what is the dilution ratio when 1 gallon of chemical is added to 4 gallons of water? What would be the ratio? Here's a way to help yourself answer it. It said 1 gallon of water or of a chemical to 4 gallons of water. Nelson, do you have that one? What's the ratio? You were unmuted. You have to unmute yourself again.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
If I'm getting it right, so time that before 40, 1 point.
1 to 4. That's how we read this. 1, 2, 4. Okay. 1 gallon of chemical to 4 gallons. They're equal parts. Okay. Let's do another one. In this issue of ratios, first of all, a question will come up. As a review, how many ounces are in a gallon? Very simple one.
$128.
128. Thank you. All right. This is the one that I guarantee you that will get everybody tripped up. How much chemical and water, so we need to know first of all, the chemical and the water would be required to fill a 32-ounce spray bottle. So our volume, and this is what goes to Mark's question he brought up, and this is why we're covering this. Okay, we have a 32-ounce spray bottle. We need to know how much chemical, how much water, and the dilution ratio is 1 to 4. Here's what I want. I want somebody to answer it, but I don't want just the answer. I need to know how you came up with the answer. Thoughts? Ken, you want to help the class?
It was 4 divided by, times 8. So 1 to 8.
So you're saying 8 ounces of chemical?
Okay, I got confused, I guess.
All right, no worries. Eduardo, you want to help him?
Yeah. So the way that I did it, I added 1 plus 4. I got the 5.
Yes.
Divided 32 ounces by 5. I ended up getting 6.4 ounces of chemical and 25.6 ounces of water.
Eduardo, you nailed it. You nailed it. So, Eduardo, I want you to explain it again to your classmates, and let's walk it through again, and I'll write it as you explain it.
So you got 32 ounces, and you add 1 plus 4.
So 1 to 4, you added those together. That gave you 5 parts, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you divide it by 32.
You took the 32 divided by 5, and it gave you what?
6.4.
Okay. And then how did you get the 25.6?
You subtract that from the 32.
Yes, sir. That was the final step. Yep. So now you have 6.4 ounces of chemical and 25.6 ounces of water. Right? So this only happens when we have a fixed container, like that spray bottle, where there's only so much room in that bottle. And in that case, and all I have is this dilution ratio, I have to make sure I'm mixing it properly. And that was exactly the right way to explain it. Eduardo, you nailed it. Good job. All right. So what I'm going to do, I've got a couple people raise their hands. Mark, go ahead.
So just to be clear, only in the fixed container, as you say, you add the 2 together.
Yep.
And at the end, you're subtracting.
Yes, you add the 2 together.
Right.
Then
Divide
you divide by the volume of the container.
Right.
Right. That's going to give you the amount of part 1. And to get part 2, you subtract that by the amount of volume of the container.
Okay.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to do for you guys. I'm going to write this out in a formula. I will post it into the class, and then I'm going to give you some assignments for you to work on this. Because even though the test only has a few questions on it, here's why this becomes critical. And this is where we'll take this to today. These things are so important because when we're starting to work with cleaning chemicals, the manufacturers will tell you either how many ounces per gallon of water or how many parts, and use a ratio like this one that we have of 1 to 4. And you're going to find your coworkers do something interesting. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a minute because this is just kind of a fun little thing here. Okay. So your coworkers, if you go and guys, this is hilarious because I've seen this for years, where they will take and say, yeah, that's good. And they'll pour it. They'll take their cup and they'll go to pour it. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. If you were making a recipe and if you were baking a cake and it calls for, a cup of water and you decide just to pour it freehand, is that going to be exact? Is it going to turn out the way you made that recipe?
No, that cake's going to be horrible.
It is, right? I don't want to eat a cake that somebody's just freehanding it.
Me either.
Recipes were the person, the chef who created that recipe took time to really make sure they understood And they know that if I maybe add not enough water, the batter won't mix well. Or if I add too much water, the batter is going to be too runny. And a perfect example of this is if you were making pancakes and you're mixing up pancake mix, you add too much milk to that mix, it's going to get too runny. And the pancakes aren't going to nice and be thick and fluffy. So the same is true in our chemical world. The chemical manufacturers, the chemist who created that formula, they had a certain amount. And, you know, we talk about the chemistry in what we do. Here's how specific the chemistry is for those chemists when they're making the chemical. Not only do they have to be precise in the exact amount of measurements, but a lot of times they have to be precise in when they add that chemical. Because if they add it out of sequence, it can ruin the mix. A perfect example of that happens when they're making something like floor finish. Floor finish is a very delicate thing in making, and it has a very precise order the way the chemist makes it. And it has to settle, it has to mix for a certain amount of time. And if you don't do those things, then the chemicals don't work well together, or they won't respond, because there is a lot of times there's a chemical reaction that occurs in that. The same happens even in things that we work with. A perfect example of products we work with that are very precise is down the road, as you guys get proficient in it, if you ever get to work at a school where you're laying gym floor finish, gym finishes are made out of a substance called urethane. And urethanes have to have a catalyst, something that you mix with it to create a chemical reaction for that urethane to work. Otherwise, it just won't cure and dry. So if they're not precise and mix it exactly the right way, the measurement that the manufacturer said, it won't ever work. So that's why this portion of our lesson about ratios is so important. Understand, what that ratio means. So, like I said, I'll write out the formula. I'll put it in the classroom. I'll have that posted this afternoon. I'm going to give you guys about 4 or 5 questions that I want you to do the math on. This one, what I'm going to ask you guys to do, I normally do not require you to email me or send me your answers. I would like you guys to send me your answers. You can email it to me. That way I get each of your responses. And in this situation, because we're dealing with a lot of math, if you're struggling with it, I can help you on a one-on-one basis. All right? So, okay. There's a lot of math today in that. And that's the last thing I'm going to wrap up with. Yep. Is this portion of our class. And that has to do with one last cleaning factor. So, amazing how chemistry works. The first factors we talked about was just the chemical actions that occurred. Then we talked about the physical cleaning actions. We've discussed up till now the pH, right? It has to be balanced. We have to know the soil we're cleaning, and then make sure we're using a chemical that has the right pH, and then it's diluted right. The last thing we need to know is factors that we refer to, and I'm going to do a screen share again. Clear my drawings. And that has to do with these factors, okay? Water temperature, okay? So we call it temp, okay? Time, Action. And the book only refers to 3 of these. I use the terminology tact. Okay? Temperature, agitation, concentration, and then time. Now, each of these plays a factor in cleaning chemicals. For example, if we are killing germs, the bottles, and if you guys do yourself a favor and look at the side label of your disinfectant, it will tell you that it has a certain amount of time that it has to be on contact with the surface where it's wet. We call that dwell time. Okay? Usually, a disinfectant needs anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 minutes of dwell time. Some, in the really hard ones, are 10 minutes. So I would say 2 to 10 minutes of dwell time for that disinfectant to work. Now, wouldn't it be great if every chemical, all you had to do was spray it and then all the soil emulsified and you had to do nothing else? Not usually the case, right? A lot of times we have to wipe. And when we wipe, that's agitation. Okay? We're literally agitating. Sometimes the agitation is very simple. It's just a straight wipe across. But sometimes when we're doing really dirty substances and we've got really filthy, there's a lot of scrubbing. If you've ever had to scrub grease in a kitchen where it's layers of grease, we have to take it off in layers. So there's a lot of scrubbing going on. That's the agitation. We just talked about the concentration when we were dealing with the dilution ratios. But this last one is temperature. And an interesting factor in cleaning chemicals. Has anybody ever cleaned their dishes and used cold water to do their dishes? Anybody like to wash your dishes with cold water? Alex, I saw your hand run up there for a second. All right. Most of the time when you're washing dishes, you like hot water, don't you? What does hot water do that is really beneficial in cleaning? Who could help me?
Will it cut the when I use when I do my dishes and use hot water, it lifts the hardness off the plate and it's easier to clean compared to cold water.
Yeah, interestingly enough, when we heat water, it improves the cleaning. Mark, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to mute.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry,
so
button.
Hot water does a good job of dissolving soil, right? Especially when we think of things like cleaning greases and oils, it has a fantastic ability to do that. But unfortunately, it can also have a negative effect in cleaning. We mentioned earlier about how water itself was a natural solvent. In fact, if we use steam can cut through soils and it can emulsify things very well. But steam can also damage things. If you take steam and you put it onto certain fabrics, you can ruin them. If you put it onto plastics, you can soften the plastic, and sometimes you can actually damage the plastics. So you have to be very careful when you use steam or hot water. So most chemical manufacturers have designed things understanding that even though hot water does a great job of cleaning, they have manufactured it to work in cooler water. Now, the average we want to deal with is just like tap water, lukewarm water. cold water is fine, but we want to be careful we don't use too cold of water, right? So tap water, lukewarm water is perfect in cleaning. In fact, one of the things it brought out in our book, that there are a lot of facilities that actually regulate the temperature of the water because they don't want people to get scalded or burned. That's a lot of times the case in a school because we're dealing with children at a school. And kids aren't necessarily going to think about that they're going to get burned by this. So they're very careful to regulate the water temperatures in that. So most manufacturers of cleaning chemicals recommend diluting their products in cool or lukewarm water. As well, it's easier on the environment. It doesn't take gas to heat that water. So as a result, it's better for the environment. So from that standpoint, most of the time, we think in terms of time, agitation, and concentration. Temperature, we want to say that as a rule of thumb, we're going to work with cold water as our standard temperature for chemicals. There's another reason. Our book earlier talked about something called volatile organic compounds, VOCs. When we take and use hot water, chemicals will tend to become more volatile, and as a result, the fumes that come off of them can create issues for our lungs. We'll breathe it in. So cold water, we don't have nearly the amount of problems that we do. And as I mentioned, it could have damaging effects. One of the effects is things like floor finishes. For years, guys would use hot water when they would clean the floors because it's great cleaner. But hot water softens up plastics, and floor finishes are made out of plastics. So as a result, it started to soften up the floor finish, and it literally would dull the floor finish over time. So there's too many reasons for us to not use hot water that we've really come to the standard in our industry that we want to use cold water or lukewarm water. So that being said, simple thing, when the chemical manufacturer tells you how much time to let a product sit, it's because they've tested it. They will tell you when to agitate. And this is going to become a factor when we start talking about things like carpet cleaning or doing of floors, like floor waxing. That becomes important. Mark, you had a question.
Speaking of dwell time, contact time, same thing?
Yes. Yep. Contact or dwell time. So, and as I mentioned, look at your chemicals in your house. The disinfectants, if you guys, everybody these days has disinfectant around there, you will notice it tells you to allow it to sit or have contact time for a period of minutes to kill certain bacteria. So that's that time that we need. So it's time, agitation or action, okay, temperature, and that's the three our book talks about. And then we already covered in the section we just finished about dilutions, concentration. Again, a lot of this is information that is found in the directions for the product. So when in doubt, read the label. What you guys have learned in just the last couple lessons will save you for years of headache in this industry, because you're understanding that there's more to those chemicals than just pouring it and mixing it freehand. It's important to follow the directions. The chemists have developed it to work a certain way. Follow those directions, follow the dilution ratios, make sure you understand the type of chemical. Am I working with an acid? Am I working with an alkaline or neutral cleaner? Or if it's none of those, and some chemicals do not have a pH, that means they are a solvent. An example of that would be if you are working with a solvent like orange oil. You won't be able to necessarily, or oil, motor oil. You might not be able to read it because it's an oil. It doesn't necessarily have a pH. It's not a water base. So if it's a pure oil, a lot of times it won't. If it's mixed with any kind of water, then it will have a pH because that makes it aqueous. So almost everything has a pH. A lot of information today, right? That's why I said this particular chapter, we want to take, there's been so much information. We want to take our time with. I think what we're going to do is on Friday, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this assignment of doing the ratios and making sure you guys all understand that. Friday, we'll review that. And then we'll get into disinfectants. I think we're going to push this lesson all the way into next Monday because I honestly feel like this is such an important lesson and it forms the basis of everything else. And we're still not going to fall behind because the next lesson's pretty easy. So what I would ask you guys to do is over this, the next couple days as you're doing the homework assignment, if you find you have questions or you're not understanding it and you can't figure it out, put that in your email. And that way I can make sure we set aside some time so I can help you with it. I am available tomorrow. I'm working here in my studio, so if you guys need my assistance and you're struggling with the homework assignment, then send me an email and I'll be happy to arrange a time for us to do a one-on-one session. If I find that there's a lot of you doing that, then we'll come back and we'll do another session on this, okay? All right, I'm not even going to ask if you have questions because, as I said, there was a lot to cover today. I'll give you the assignment. You guys look for that in the classroom. I'll have it posted by 1 o'clock today. Okay?
Is there any reading to do?
No reading. This is the only thing I want you to focus in on right now. Make sure that you can understand that. Actually, Ken, I will clarify that. Read pages 20 and 21 about disinfectants. That is a reading assignment that I want you to do because we will cover that on Friday's class.
And question, sir.
Yes.
When will you like this email?
The district email that I emailed you guys from the original, it's that, and I'll post it again in the classroom. It's dswindle@egusd.net. So I'll make sure that's posted in the classroom as well with the homework assignment.
That did not answer my question.
What did you ask? I'm sorry, Alex. I thought you asked.
You wanted an email from us?
Yes, I'm going to give you the homework assignment in the class, but your response, your replies is going to be an email with your homework assignment completed, like the answers. Normally, I don't ask for the answers, but this time I want you guys to actually turn in an assignment.
Okay.
Are you understanding, Alex?
Yes, but when are you wanting this?
By Friday.
Okay.
By Friday.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what the math, you want us to work out the math problems so you can see what mistakes.
Yes. Making sure you understand it. So, yep. And feel free, hey guys, you could do it a lot of different ways. If you want to take a sheet of paper, write it out on a sheet of paper and take a picture and email me that picture, I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that. I'm looking for not just that you got it right, but how did you come up with it? Eduardo explained his process, so he did it exactly that way. That's what I'm looking for, is you guys being able to show me your math, to show how did you come up with the answer. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few different questions make sure you guys understand it. And I'm not going to get crazy with it, but I think there's just some basic ones that I'll make sure you understand. Okay. All right. So that's it for today. I appreciate you guys. Good class. Like I said, this was the math one. It was funny. Last night I was going over reviewing and preparing for today's class because I want to make sure I could do it on a whiteboard. My wife kind of got on to me. She's like, no, you're not making me do this class. So she was teasing with me because she felt like I was trying to teach her it. She's my guinea pig. All right, guys. Thank you guys for a fun class today. And I will see you all on Friday. And anybody who has questions with the assignment, email me. And that way I can get back to you and help you out. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a nice day. Everybody have a nice day.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sunlight.
Right?